The first time I saw my husband holding my sister's baby, he looked more peaceful than he had in years. Not shocked, not guilty, peaceful. I was standing in the doorway of room 512 at St. Vincent Medical Center with a paper gift bag in one hand and a bouquet of white lilies in the other. My sister lay back against the raised hospital bed, exhausted but glowing, while my husband stood beside her with one hand resting on the blanket and the other adjusting the newborn cap on the baby's head like he had every right in the world. Then my sister looked up and saw me, and she smiled. Not the nervous smile of someone caught doing something shameful, not the shaky smile of someone about to explain. No, it was a calm, satisfied smile. The kind of smile a person wears when they believe they've already won. "Claire," she said softly, like I was late to my own humiliation. "You made it." My husband, Ethan, turned around so slowly that for one strange second, I thought maybe I was the one dreaming. Nobody rushed toward me. Nobody apologized. My mother stepped in behind me, carrying a plastic cup of hospital coffee, and my father hovered outside the door, pretending to study a notice on the wall. That was when I understood. This wasn't a secret that had just slipped out. This was a truth everyone had carefully arranged for me to discover all at once. I set the flowers down on the side table. My sister brushed her fingertips over the baby's cheek and said, "His name is Oliver James." Then she looked straight at me and added, "We thought James would be nice. Family names matter." James was my grandfather's name. My husband finally found his voice. "Claire, I was going to tell you." "No," I said quietly. "You weren't." And before I go further, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. The strange thing is, I didn't cry. Not there. Not when my mother avoided my eyes. Not when my father stayed silent. Not even when my sister shifted the blanket and I saw the gold bracelet on her wrist, the one Ethan had told me he'd misplaced 3 months earlier. I just stood there and took it all in, piece by piece, like a woman memorizing the layout of a burning house before she walked out of it forever. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said. Ethan gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "Your lawyer?" My sister smirked. "Claire, don't be dramatic." That was the word that nearly broke me. Dramatic. As if I were the problem. As if betrayal was only painful when inconvenient people reacted to it. So I smiled. Just once. Very small. "Congratulations," I said. Then I turned around and walked out of the room while the lilies still smelled sweet and innocent behind me. What they didn't know was this. I had already spent the last 6 months quietly preparing for the day Ethan's lies caught up with him. And 12 days after that hospital room, at a family celebration they planned without me, I would hand every guest an envelope so precise, so devastating, that by the time the champagne went flat, my husband, my sister, and my mother would all be staring at the wreckage of the life they tried to steal from me. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 35 years old, and this is the story of how I lost my marriage, my family, and my patience, and still walked away with everything that mattered. I met Ethan Cole in Seattle in the fall of 2019 at a charity event I hadn't wanted to attend. I was an architect then, exhausted, overworked, and still trying to prove that being the youngest associate at my firm wasn't a lucky break. Ethan was easy in the way confident men often are. He knew how to listen without seeming quiet, how to compliment without sounding rehearsed, how to make every room feel smaller until it held only him and the person he wanted. When he found out I had restored a 1920s craftsman house by myself, he looked at me like I'd done something magical. "You built your own life," he said. At the time, I thought that was admiration. Years later, I understood it was inventory. We got married 18 months later in a vineyard outside Portland. Small wedding, Rain in the morning, sun by noon. I wore my grandmother's ring on my right hand because she had always told me, never let a marriage become the only thing that makes you valuable. I laughed when she said it. She did not. After the wedding, I kept the house I had bought before I met Ethan in my name only. He asked about adding himself to the title twice, maybe 3 times. I told him no every time, lightly at first, then firmly. He always backed off when I was firm. That should have taught me something. The second important thing you should know is this. My younger sister Ava had always been the kind of woman people made excuses for. Ava was beautiful, in the careless way that makes other people call selfishness free-spirited. If she borrowed money, she was struggling. If she forgot birthdays, she was overwhelmed. If she flirted with someone's boyfriend, she was joking. If she crossed a line, my mother always found a way to redraw the line. By the time Ava moved back to Seattle last year, just for a few months, I was already doing too much. My mother had started calling me in tears every Sunday afternoon, saying she felt foggy, forgetful, worried about getting older. My father's hardware business was failing, though no one said it directly. Ethan was suddenly traveling more for development meetings, related to a consulting company he claimed he wanted to launch. And because I had always been the dependable one, the one with the house and the steady income and the emergency fund, everyone leaned on me like I had been built for carrying weight. At first, Ava only dropped by for dinner, then coffee, then long afternoons at my kitchen island while Ethan worked from home. Once, I came downstairs and found the two of them laughing so hard she had one hand on his shoulder for balance. When they saw me, the room changed. That was the first moment my instincts spoke loudly. I ignored them. Because betrayal rarely enters your life wearing a villain's face. Usually, it comes dressed as coincidence, timing, stress, family, misunderstanding. Then, one night, I saw a charge on our joint credit card for a boutique hotel in Santa Barbara, while Ethan had supposedly been in Denver. I asked him about it. He didn't stutter, didn't panic, just smiled and said the card must have been cloned. That answer might have worked if he hadn't spent the next week checking his phone like it contained oxygen. So I started paying attention. I stopped asking questions and started collecting answers. A late-night text preview from someone saved as A. 2 separate rideshare charges ending at my parents' neighborhood. A transfer from our shared business account to a new LLC I had never heard of. Then, the biggest crack of all. An invoice emailed by mistake to my address from a pediatric concierge service thanking Ethan Cole and Ava Monroe for selecting their newborn care package. Newborn. At first, I thought it had to be fraud, a mistake, some twisted administrative mix-up. Then I sat there, staring at the screen until the room went cold around me. The due date listed in the invoice lined up perfectly with the weekend Ethan told me he had gone on a silent retreat in Arizona. I printed the invoice. Then I called my attorney. Her name was Dana Mercer, and she had represented me once before when a contractor tried to sue over the restoration of my house. She was direct, unromantic, and impossible to rattle. When I showed her everything, she folded her hands and said, "Claire, I need you to do nothing emotional and everything strategic." So that's what I did. I found out Ethan had been moving money from our design consultancy into a side company under his sole control. Dana proved he had done it while still using shared resources and misrepresenting expenses. Because the original business structure had been set up with a misconduct clause, one I insisted on when we formed it, he could be forced out at book value if financial breach was documented. He thought he was clever. He forgot I was careful. The house stayed mine. The company became mine. The evidence became organized. And then came the hospital. That day should have shattered me. Instead, it clarified everything. Because once the truth is standing in a hospital bassinet wearing a blue knit cap, there is no point in negotiating with denial. 3 days later, my mother called and invited me to Ava's welcome home brunch. Not baby shower, not family discussion, a brunch. At my parents' house. For close friends and family. I asked who would be there. She hesitated just long enough to answer every question I hadn't asked. People who care about all of you, she said. All of you. Meaning they had already built a new version of the family in their minds, and I was expected to either fit into it politely or disappear. I told her I'd come. Then I called Dana. Then I called Marcus Reed, an old college friend who now owned a private event printing company downtown. I need 40 envelopes, I told him. Cream paper, heavy stock, elegant, no mistakes. For wedding invitations? He asked. Something like that, I said. Inside each envelope, we placed copies of exactly 5 documents. 1. Proof that Ethan had transferred company funds into his shadow LLC. 2. The legal notice removing him from ownership. 3. A certified statement showing the Seattle Craftsman House belonged solely to me. 4. A draft filing for divorce based on adultery and financial misconduct. 5. A 1-page letter from me that simply read, "To those who were invited here to celebrate honesty, love, and family, you deserve to know the full guest list includes betrayal, fraud, and deception." I was told to accept this quietly. I decline. The brunch was held on a Sunday under white umbrellas in my parents' back garden. It was almost beautiful. A string trio played near the hedge. Champagne sat in silver buckets. My mother wore pale blue. Ava wore cream. Ethan stood beside her in an open-collar shirt, one hand resting on the back of her chair like a man posing for the future. My father looked 10 years older. When I arrived, conversations softened but didn't stop. That told me enough. People knew there was drama. They just didn't know the shape of it yet. My mother hurried toward me with a brittle smile. "Claire, sweetheart, I'm so glad you came. I brought something for the guests," I said, lifting the box in my hands. Her smile flickered. "What kind of something?" "A little reading material." I began passing the envelopes out one by one. Ava watched me, confused at first. Ethan went still. My father's face drained of color. When the last envelope was in the last hand, I picked up a champagne glass from a passing tray and tapped it lightly with my nail. The trio stopped playing. 40 faces turned toward me. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "Please go ahead and open your envelopes now." There is no sound quite like a room full of people discovering that they have accidentally shown up to the wrong story. Paper slid free, eyes moved, mouths parted. A woman near the roses gasped first. Then someone whispered, "Oh my God." Then no one whispered at all. Ethan took 2 steps toward me. "Claire." I lifted my hand. "Don't." He stopped. Ava's lips had gone colorless. "You had no right." "No right?" I said, calm enough to frighten even myself. "You had an affair with my husband. You hid a pregnancy. You let me walk into a hospital room like a fool. And you think my mistake was printing the paperwork?" My mother stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. "This is private," she hissed. I turned to look at her. Private ended when you all decided public humiliation was an acceptable delivery method. Silence again. Then my father, who had said almost nothing for weeks, sank slowly into a chair and covered his mouth with one hand. Ethan tried one last time. "Claire, I was going to make this right." I laughed then, not loudly, just once. "With what?" I asked. "My money? My house? My business?" Which part were you planning to use? That landed, because that was the part none of the guests knew. So I told them. I told them the house had never belonged to Ethan. I told them he no longer owned any part of the company. I told them the divorce filing would be submitted Monday morning. I told them the only reason I had waited was because I wanted the truth to arrive dressed properly. By then, several guests were no longer pretending to look away. They were reading every page like their lives depended on it. Ava stood up with the baby in her arms and said, "You're jealous. That's what this is. You can't stand not being the center of everything." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, very softly, "Ava, I was never fighting for attention. I was fighting for dignity. There's a difference. You should learn it while he's still small enough not to remember." Her face changed. For the first time all afternoon, she looked frightened. Not because I yelled, because I didn't. I set my untouched champagne on the table beside the floral centerpiece my mother had arranged that morning. White peonies, my favorite. Then I faced the guests one last time. "I'm sorry you were brought here under false pretenses," I said. "But now that you know the truth, you're free to celebrate whatever you still believe deserves celebrating." And with that, I walked down the garden path. Nobody stopped me. Not my mother, not my sister, not my husband, not even my father. I reached my car, closed the door, and only then let myself breathe like a woman who had been underwater too long. The divorce was filed the next morning. Ethan moved out by the end of the week. My mother sent 12 messages. I answered none of them. My father sent one. It said, "I should have stood beside you the moment you walked into that hospital room. I know that now." I didn't respond to that one either. Not yet. 3 weeks later, I changed the name of the firm back to Bennett Studio. Just Bennett. Clean. Exact. Mine. 6 months after that, I sold the house for more than I expected and bought a smaller place near the water with windows tall enough to let the morning in without asking permission. People sometimes imagine revenge as fire, but honestly, the best kind is architecture. It's structure. It's documentation. It's patience. It's knowing exactly which beam to remove so the whole rotten thing collapses under the weight of its own lies. I did not get my marriage back. I did not get my family back. And I did not get an apology worth keeping. But I got something better. I got myself back. And once a woman does that, she becomes very expensive to betray twice. If you like this story, subscribe my channel for more beautiful stories.